Since we're here to address the issue from the standpoint of government involvement, I'd like to start with a kind of short rundown of where our government has been along the way, with some elements that a lot of people may not be aware of. Of course, we all know that we had back in the 60s and so on, Project Sign and Grudge and Blue Book. And then in 1969, the Blue Book was shut down based on recommendations from Condon and so on. So at that point, if you called the Air Force office and said, well, what's happening in UFOs and so on, they'd say, oh, no, we gave all that stuff up back in 1969. The truth of the matter is that the Bollinger memo that actually shut down Blue Book had underlined in fine print, but any UFO issues that might affect national security, we will continue to follow through on. And so it didn't really die, it just went out of sight. Now, along the way, something that came across my path in this was that I was contacted by a CEO of a think tank in Washington, D.C. This is back a couple of decades ago. He says, I want you to come and participate in a conference here in Washington. I said, well, frankly, I'm too busy. What's it about? He says, I can't tell you what it's about, but if you come and you participate, you will consider it later to be one of the most important conferences you ever went to. Well, since I had respect for him and knew his background and many things he's done, I did finally decide to come to this conference. And when I arrived, there were about, 15, 20 people. I recognized some of them from the military, from CIA, DIA, some businessmen, and so on. So I thought, well, this is quite an interesting group of people. And so, to start the conference off, he said, this conference is about disclosing something to the American public. As a startup position, let's assume that there have been crash retrievals by Russia, China, and the United States. And the question is, can we bring this out to the public? And so I think I, and most of the people I knew, we talked to them later, said, oh, this is really cool. I mean, this could really go someplace. So he said, okay, the strategy we're going to use is we're going to make a list of all the areas that you think would be affected by this. And then on each one, you're going to have to grade them on a scale from +9 to -9 as to the level of impact and whether it's positive or negative. Okay, so we started out by making a list. So we started out with the obvious things. Well, I mean, the stock market, maybe religions, well, certainly politics would be affected. So we made a long list. I mean, it was really a long list. And the time we got down to the bottom of the list, we were really in the weeds. Like, okay, if corporation A has access to retrieve materials that corporation B doesn't, then when this comes out, corporation B is going to sue corporation A, they're going to sue the government. This is really going to be a tough thing to kind of handle. So, okay. So anyway, we broke up into groups, each taking a certain number of the things that were in our list. Okay. And in my group, we added up the numbers, +9 to -9. And we ended up in the negative category, even though we were kind of positively disposed to the idea. So I thought, well, maybe that just has to do with the particular list that we got. So then I talked to other people that were on other lists and said, we came to a negative number also. Well, make a long story short, it turned out that everybody going through these lists, there's a very sophisticated situation with complex computers and big screens and all that kind of stuff. It finally came down to the fact that the problem was there's so many areas to handle, and there was no way to handle them all at the same time. And so the final result was, therefore, the leader said, we're going to recommend that we don't go forward with this. And so those of us who were participating in this were pretty disappointed, thinking, we started thinking that, this would be a good thing to do. So anyway, let's go forward up to, let's say, 2008. Now you suddenly have, as Leslie proclaimed so well in her December 2017 article in the New York Times, Senators Reid, Senators Reid, Inouye, and Stevens decided that there should be a new study started from scratch with new people involved to investigate the area. So I would like to remind you that those three senators are all part of the Gang of Eight, which means they probably had some background as to why this was a good idea. And so they told the Defense Intelligence Agency to start a program. Now this was the OSAP program, which you're probably all familiar with, Advanced Aerospace Weapons Systems Application Program, which eventually morphed into ATIP, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. And the requirements of the DIA were two. One, the most obvious one, of course, is where are these things coming from? What's their intent? What do we have to deal with here? It turns out that that was not of particular interest. It was really item number two, and that is, since we know other countries are researching this, getting access to materials and so on, what happens if they develop advanced technologies, adversarial competitors that leaped ahead of us? That's what they were most worried about. So we had to take on that as our challenge to figure out, what could it be? Now, the list of things they wanted us to investigate, and I want you to think about the fact that they must have known something to make a list like this. They were interested in 12 potential threat areas with regard to UAP: lift, propulsion, control, power generation, space-time translation, materials, configuration structure, signature reduction, human effects, human interface, armament, and peripheral support issues. Well, that's a pretty intelligent list. So chances are you've got some knowledge that's driving this list. So our ingoing assumption was, okay, maybe what we had heard way back in 2004 was true, and that is countries do have access to crash-approved materials. Okay, so, well, let's just go get their materials and get them into the scientific community. Part of my job was to try to negotiate that, and the answer was, this is so compartmentalized, it just isn't going to happen. When I say compartmentalized, I mean people had stuff in their basements that they would love to have brought up to their scientists and engineers in the top floor, but it was so compartmentalized and so secure, they couldn't do that. So that turned out to be a non-starter. Said, okay, well, let's try plan B. Pass all the materials to us, we'll set up a kind of a buffer organization, and then we'll come in the front door for your people to work on it, and we won't reveal where this stuff came from, so that'll give you, what you need to separate it. Well, that got shot down big time. So we went to Plan C. Plan C was, okay, we can't do this the obvious straightforward way, all this technical stuff. So how about this? Let's go to all the experts in the world that we wish we could have passed this information on to, and tell them that we're just doing a survey for Bigelow Aerospace. We'd like to know where your field will be in the year 2050. Unclassified, you go to people in other countries, and so the kinds of programs that they set up for us, I'll just read a few of them. There were 38 altogether, actually, just to give you an idea of how technical we consider this program to be. Aneutronic fusion propulsion, superconductors and gravity research, positron aerospace propulsion, warp drive dark energy extra dimensions, advanced nuclear propulsion, brain-machine interfaces, IEC fusion as a compact energy source, quantum vacuum energy extraction, space-time metric engineering, traversable wormholes, stargates, advanced aerospace materials, metallic glasses for aerospace use, MEMS-based biosensors, and on and on and on. So we had got 38 of those. None of the individuals that we approached had any ideas that anything to do with trying to figure out anything about ET technologies. And so we told them you could even publish them in the open literature, and many of them did. When I gathered them all up, we posted them on what's called the JWICS website for the Pentagon as DIRDS, D-I-R-D-S, Defense Intelligence Reference Documents. And usually when you publish technical papers like that, and this is just for contractors in the intelligence community, they go up there and they're of interest to people for about a month or so. We were told that this series of DIRDS was the most high quality, long lasting set they'd ever put up. They just couldn't take them down because everybody was really into wanting to see these. So eventually, as time goes forward and people do FOIAs, at this point, all of these papers have basically been made available, and you can get them. And of course, I thought all these people were going to trounce all over me and say, "Oh my God, you didn't tell me this had anything to do with ET or UFOs or whatever." But the quality papers we got, I think, are probably almost as good as if we had been able to share materials and so on. So anyway, that's where we have come up to at the present time. And of course now, after her article appeared and all the interest came up, and as you know, we have people like Dave Rush coming forward and saying straight out, we've got materials, craft, and bodies. He's not the only one. As it turns out, the person who ran the program at DIA for us was Jim Lekatsky, if you're familiar with that name. And they just published a book, Lekatsky, who ran the program from DIA, Colm Kelleher, who was the project manager at Bigelow Advanced Aerospace Studies, who was the prime contractor, and George Knapp, called Inside the U.S. Government Covert UFO Programs, Initial Revelations. And one of the key phrases in there that certainly caught my attention when I saw it was that Jim Lekatsky, who is also a very high intelligence community responsible individual, reveals in the book that we have craft of unknown origin, and we've gotten inside it. So it isn't just Dave Rush as a high-level intelligence person bringing this out to the world. We now have the person who ran this program, which is a very significant program. So anyway, that's where we've come to. So I think now's the time that, you know, we have all these reasons to take this really seriously and to expect that something is going to come out into the public. And of course, many of you know about the Schumer amendment, where, can't believe it, in a congressional amendment, the word NHI, non-human intelligence, appears over 20 times. And if that passes, things will move forward at some relatively rapid clip. But there are going to be problems, because some of the problems are going to go back to what we looked at even in our disclosure conference. And that is, people get materials. Ordinarily, you say, okay, it's on a contract, the government has access to it and so on. But originally, when they went to aerospace corporations and elsewhere and said, you know, you got to help us with this problem, their answer was, we're not going to do that. Well, what do you mean you're not going to do that? I mean, we're going to give you money. Yeah, but then you'll own it all, and you know we'll work on it. We'll take advantage of it. So they basically said, okay, if we have control, then we'll consider doing it. And there are technical ways of getting control. For example, if you're on a contract and you sign an NDA or whatever, well, I mean, the government is still involved. On the other hand, there are things called IRAD, internal R&D, that all major corporations have, where they get money from the government, but it's for them to do whatever they want to do, and whatever they do, they own. And so that's an issue that's going to put a damper on complete disclosure to the public, I'm sure. So these aspects of the Schumer memorandum, they're really going to have to work on that to make it work to where you know, the public in general is going to learn a lot. But I think we're on the right track. So that's where we are on the development of the government position.